Welcome back to another lesson, everybody. This time around, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how we can take those 3ds Max files and also how we can take our bitmap file as well that we use as our texture and combine them and make them usable inside of Unreal Tournament. What do you say, Logan? By the end of this lesson here, our goal should be to actually see the weapon in the game, right?
Right.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that? Okay, that sounds good so far. He's like, what do you want me to add? All right, so to do this, first thing I want to do is I want to give you we've got our objective, get the gun into the game. Now let's talk real quick about an overview of how we're going to actually accomplish this objective. I think this is really important because there's a lot of steps that we're going to walk through in this process. Don't you think there's quite a few steps?
Right.
I mean, compared to everything that we've done so far, I would say this is probably the
Yes, there's different programs we have to use, different directory setups we have to create.
Exactly. Okay, so I would say we're basically going to do the following. We're going to be creating a folder. Okay, this folder is going to reside up under Unreal Tournament. And this folder is going to be, we could just say it's our package for now. We're going to put everything up under there, all of our 3ds Max files that we've exported out, our bitmap file, and then some utilities that we're going to get off the Internet. Technically, we already have them, but you'll get yours off the Internet. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to, from there, we will go ahead and convert our texture over into a PCX file. Then we're going to run a conversion utility that's going to convert all of our 3ds files into a single data file and a single ANIB file. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. So we'll have 2 files. And then we will, basically from there, we're going to make some changes to a couple of files like the Unreal Tournament.ini file or any file, however you like to say it. And the bottom line is we're going to end up using a exe program called UCC, and we're just going to say UCC make, and that's going to compile our new package into a .u file. And then from there, we'll be able to go into Unreal Tournament's editor, Unreal Ed, and from in there, we'll actually be able to see our weapon. We're going to set a few default properties and then use the weapon. Well, not actually use, but we'll put it inside the game and be able to pick it up and see it.
Exactly.
Haven't missed anything there?
Nope.
I mean, I kind of brushed over it, but it's a quick overview. So the very first thing let's just go ahead and create the folder first. So I'm going to come in here, double-click on my computer, come down to Programs, which is my D drive. Yeah, I'm getting to it. And then from there, come down here to Unreal Tournament. And inside Unreal Tournament, at its root, I'm going to go ahead and right-click, New, Folder. And this is going to basically be whatever you want your package name to be. And I'm going to call it 3D Buzz. Okay, simple enough. And I'll go ahead and hit Enter to go into 3D Buzz. Now what I need to do is copy all of my 3DS files into it. I'm also going to copy my texture, like I said a few minutes ago, over into it, the texture that's applied to the gun. And I'm also going to put a couple of utilities in there as well. I'm just keeping everything all together in one folder. Makes it a lot easier to manage everything. Now, I've got a little folder set up down here on my desktop called Gun Files, just to make this entire process a little bit quicker and easier. I'll just go ahead and double-click on it, and when I do that, you'll notice there's all of my 3DS files. There's 2 exe programs. The heck are those doing there? And my buzz_texture.bmp that got created earlier when we did the render to texture thing inside of Max 5 in the lighting section. So let's first go ahead and highlight all these guys, and then simply copy them over here. And of course, I could have just moved them and deleted this other folder, but we'll just leave this behind for whatever reason. All right, so now I've got all of my files that I need inside of 3D Buzz. I think this is a very appropriate time to stop for just a second, and let's talk about 3DS to UNR as a utility and Bright as a utility. First of all, Bright was created by
Epic. It's Epic Games' Eric Denerve. He wrote that its main purpose is to take a high depth, like a bitmap or Targa, and convert it down to an 8-bit PCX file, the format that Unreal is going to be expecting and uses.
Right. And so that 8-bit PCX file is very important.
Right.
And right now, our bitmap down here is a 24-bit true color bitmap, right?
Correct.
And that's one of the types that Bright will take. So Bright also takes, just on a quick note, also takes 8-bit, 16-bit, 24-bit, and 32-bit Targa files. Of course, the 24-bit true color bitmap. And then it will take an 8-bit palletized bitmap file, but you got to be careful because you start dealing with Paint Shop and some of the older programs. You can run into problems with, as they'll say in their help documentation, archaic file formats. And then there's also the ZSoft PCX format as well. That's also 8-bit palletized PCX. Let me correct myself. A second ago I said 8-bit palletized PCX when I was talking about the archaic file types. I meant 8-bit palletized BMP file types. So anyways, be careful with that. So anyways, as Logan was just saying, Bright's job is going to be to simply convert this over into the PCX file that we can use for our weapon. Then we've got 3DS to UNR, which was designed by Mr. Logan.
By Legend Entertainment.
Absolutely. And what will this nice little utility do for us?
It will take all our 3DS files and put them into two files, our ANIV and our data file, named by whatever class we give it.
Okay. So when you say by whatever class, what are you talking about?
Okay, now we're going to get into what we're going to actually name the gun. We've made this package named 3D Buzz.
So you're telling me that for the last several hours we've just been calling this thing gun and weapon, and we need to give it a name now?
You'd kind of want to.
Okay, let's see. Let's call it Viper.
Okay, sounds good.
Gee, we didn't see that one coming. Okay, so its name's going to be Viper. So with that, go ahead and continue.
So you tell 3DS UNR what you're going to name this class you're building, in our case, Viper. And then you tell it all the 3DS files to use for animation and model files.
Okay. Sounds good. Then after we run that process, it's just a matter of compiling and we're ready to rock and roll, right?
Right, we'll edit the script files.
Yeah. There's some more stuff in there. We don't want to scare them too much yet. Okay, so the first thing that we probably need to do, let's just go ahead and use Bright. Now, you may be thinking, well, you've talked to me or you've told me a little bit about what Bright is. Where do I get Bright from? Well, go out to File Planet, do a search for Bright. You'll find it, download it. There you go. As for 3DS to UNR, you can go over to unreal.epicgames.com, and over on the left-hand side, down near the bottom, you'll find a 3DS to UNR converter section, and click on that link, and over on the right-hand side, you'll get the HTML document that contains all the documentation, and there is a link embedded in there as well for downloading 3DS to UNR. So with that, let's go ahead and use Bright real quick and come in here and convert our bitmap over to the PCX. So I'm going to come down here and load my command prompt, or execute it anyways, and we'll switch on over to D drive. And I'm going to come up here and copy this path, come back down here and do a CD /, and then we can just right click. And what am I doing? I'm losing my mind. CD space and right click. Here we go. There we go. Now from inside here, you'll see there's all of our files. And to execute Bright, it's very simple. It's simply Bright space the input file space the output file. Okay, and there's a bunch of different flags that you can use for controlling things like dithering and other options. Go through the documentations, take a look at it. We're keeping this very simple for the purposes of this lesson right here, because this is really all we need to do is just simple conversion over. It does a really good job, wouldn't you say, Logan?
Yes, it does.
So I'm just going to come in here and say Bright, and our input file is going to be buzz_texture.bmp. space, and our output file, this is where we need to go ahead and make up a name for it. Our output file, since our gun's called Viper, let's call this Viper map.pcx. Okay? Go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to churn away. Depending on how fast your computer is, this could go quickly, or it could take a while to do. Okay, so now we've got our PCX file created. The next thing we need to do is we need to go ahead, we're going to start focusing on 3DS to UNR. We need to go ahead and set the project. Okay? So any special comments you want to say about the project?
We're just telling 3DS UNR where we're going to be working.
Okay. So to do this, I'll just come in here and simply say 3DS to UNR space dash set proj, like such. I'll hit enter. You'll see that it gives me a dialog box, browse for folder, and I'm just going to come back down here to my D drive. Again, come down and find Unreal Tournament, expand that, and click on 3D Buzz. That's all I need to do, and tell it OK. Now, it is going to actually do something. Watch back here. It just gave me a classes folder and a models folder. Up in our classes folder, you're going to find a file in just a minute that's going to be a .uc file. And our models folder is going to contain three different things. It's going to contain two .3D files. Okay, one is going to be the anim file that we've been talking about, and the other one's going to be the data file. You can designate between the two because of an _a.3d or an _d.3d, and I'll show you this in a few minutes. But anyways, we're going to find those there, and we're also going to find our texture there as well. So since vipermap.pcx is our texture, let's go ahead and simply just move this over into our models folder. So move here. And there we go. So with that, what do you think, Logan? Are we ready to go ahead and do our little class creation with 3ds2UNR?
Yep.
Okay, so let's do that. All I'm going to do is come back down here. I'm going to say 3ds2UNR space. Now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and give 3ds2UNR my class name. And in this case, my class name is going to be Viper. So I'll go ahead and type in Viper space. Now what I need to do is I can come in here and type out the whole sequence of 3ds files, or I can just be lazy and simply do a wildcard star dot 3ds, like such. Okay, you can also use the question mark wildcard, things like that as well. So with this in place, I'll just now hit enter. And this is where, for some of you guys out there that's following along, may start running into problems. Isn't that right, Logan?
Yes.
There's all sorts of interesting errors that you can see. And if you do head on over to Epic Games site, the unreal.epicgames.com, and find that documentation I was talking about on this little converter utility, you will find a section in there dedicated to warnings and errors. And there's some interesting errors that you can have, like number one, if you don't actually pay attention to the size of your gun as you're making it, and you make it outside of this invisible bounding box that we set up earlier when we actually did the modeling. That could cause problems, wouldn't you say, Logan?
Yes, it will.
If you accidentally leave a spline or two in there and attach that in, what do you think about that?
That causes a very interesting problem.
Yeah, that could cause warnings, errors, either of the two, and even let you get through and into
Unreal,
and you can see some very exciting things happen there. Just trust us on that. Let's see. How about if our textures, if you didn't respect the 0 to 1 texture coordinates? This can give us trouble as well by letting us know that our texture has fallen somewhere outside of our coordinates. There's all sorts of different problems that you can get. So anyways, you want to simply make sure that it's going to list all of your 3ds files over here, and that it tells you that it's imported and how many frames it's imported, and make sure this is right. You remember in the last lesson when we used our utility and we went through that we did spin up as 10, spin down as 10, and all of the rest of them were 5 frames each. And also, you remember we did 6 animation cycles, so please make sure that it's 6 sequences that are actually brought in. Now, at this point, we've had a few things that have been created, wouldn't you say?
Definitely.
Okay, so let's take a look. First of all, I mentioned to you guys a second ago, we actually have our Unreal Script class definition that's been created. If we come up here under classes, double-click, look at that, viper.uc. And if I double-click on this, it's got all sorts of interesting-looking code in here. It's actually quite simple stuff. It's for the most part just a matter of what class are we going to inherit from inside the game, and we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Our mesh that we're going to be importing, the animation sequences, and the texture. And then down here we get into any default properties that we're going to assign for this thing that it's going to have by default once you compile it and you bring it into the actual game. Okay? So this is our class definition file. Let's go ahead and come back up. Let's jump down here to models. And as I said earlier when we were kind of going over things, I told you to expect to find 3 files in here. And here you go. Here's our aniv file. By the way, that's A-N-I-V. My lips kind of stick together when I try to say aniv. But anyways, this right here, inside this file, it contains basically our frame range. It contains the positions of the vertices in each frame. You can look at it as simply saying it contains our animations, how we like to say it. And in the _D file, this is our data file, which contains all of our polygon faces, etc. So this is, you can look at it as being our geometry. Sound good to you, Logan?
Yep.
Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and go back up. And actually, before we start getting too carried away, we probably want to come in here and make a correction in this guy right here, right?
Right.
So let's go and open viper.uc back up. And there's 2 things in here that we're going to want to change. First of all, if you find your texture import line, okay, the exec command texture import, and scroll on over to where you see the actual file that's going to be imported for the texture, look at this, viper1.pcx. Now, Logan, it only happened a few seconds ago, but do you remember the name that I actually told Bright to use as my PCX file?
Right, just Viper.
Was it just Viper? Viper map.
Viper map.
There you go. So this is giving me Viper1.pcx. You got to be careful with that because what the 3ds to UNR will do when it comes to the texture, and by the way, it doesn't have to be one texture. We can actually have multiple textures here. Of course, as we said earlier in this whole VTM, we're just sticking this whole thing as simple as possible. We're sticking to one texture. Anyways, what this is going to do is simply name it your class name, and this is texture number 1. Then you could have texture 2, texture 3, so on and so forth. So that's what's going on there. What we're going to do is rename this to our proper texture. So all we need to do is simply highlight this guy. Well, we don't even need to highlight the whole thing. Viper map, like such. So far, so good?
Yep.
Now we do need to kind of change one more thing as well, don't we?
Right. We want to actually tell it to define this as a weapon, not as an actor.
So go ahead. Tell them about actor real quick.
This is, well, you were going to talk about object-oriented.
Well, yeah, I know. Here we are. We're bantering for a moment. Let's see. Object-oriented programming gets into a gigantic, huge lesson, and we're going to narrow it down to 30 seconds or less. Basically, when dealing with object-oriented programming, you define classes. A quick example, an animal would be considered a class, and then from the animal class you could derive objects, which would be a dog, a cat, etc. And now animals they all share general characteristics. Let's just say that we have a class defined that's called four-legged animals. Well, they have 4 legs, and they'll probably have a mouth, they'll probably have eyes, etc. And then when you start getting down to the specifics of a dog, let's say a German Shepherd dog versus a poodle, there's going to be, or even a dog versus a cat, there's going to be characteristic changes that are going to be independent to those things. And in object-oriented programming, you have the ability to work at an upper level and define a master class, like, let's say, animal. And then from animal, I could then come down, I could define another class that could be 4-legged animal that could inherit some of the things from animal. And then I could have another class that's called dog, and that class could inherit from a 4-legged animal. So far, is this pretty good for beginners?
Yep, that's what it is.
Okay. And in this case right here, we actually have an actor class that when we say expands actor, what we're doing is Viper's inheriting from actor.
Actor is a very high-level class. Almost everything is expanded from actor.
Exactly. So, but we want to drop down a little bit lower because this isn't going to give us the things that we're necessarily looking for at this point. We want to actually expand down at the tournament weapon level.
Right. We want to build on the weapon code that's already been programmed in. We want this to act like a weapon.
Yeah, we don't want to redo all that code, do we?
That is a lot of code.
That would be a very long, boring, very long VTM. So let's go ahead and say that class Viper expands, and we're going to change actor to say tournament weapon.
Sounds good.
Okay, so making sure I spelled everything correctly because my spelling is horrible. And with this out of the way, for this particular lesson, this is all that we need to worry about coming in here and setting. Now, you're going to see in a few minutes when we actually get over into Unreal Ed and then actually into the game, that our gun is going to be positioned improperly. Also, you're going to see when we get into Unreal Ed that we're going to need to set up a few default properties. Now, we're going to go ahead and do those inside of Unreal Ed so that we can see the gun inside the game, yada, yada, yada. But in the next lesson, we're going to come back in here and we're going to spend some time defining our default properties, which means when we start talking about default properties in just a minute inside the editor, keep that in the back of your mind that we could be defining all of those in this section right here. And we'll also be doing things like defining our location for the gun, and et cetera, right?
Exactly.
And real quick, even though this isn't the place for it, we're going to come back and add a whole lot more than that into this file, aren't we?
Right, we're pretty much going to write all the code in this file.
So in other words, when we want the actual fire sequence or the alt fire sequence, et cetera, we're going to write all that in here, right?
Right.
So we're going to be coming back to this UC file quite a bit. But for right now, this is enough information to give off to a compiler, UCC, and have it compile into a .u file so that we can actually make use of that package inside of Unreal Ed and in the game. Okay? So let's go ahead and come up here and do File, Save, and we'll just minimize this down. And, Logan, anything else that you can think of? Or do we need to head on over now to our ini file?
Yep, we need to set up the ini file.
Okay.
Set up a few lines.
So at this point, what I'm going to do is come back up here to Unreal Tournament. I'm going to come down here to its System folder, and from inside the System folder, look for Unreal Tournament.ini, or ini. And from in here, we're going to, first of all, I'm going to do one thing just for the purposes of this VTM right here. I'm just going to scroll down a little ways to, let's see, engine core, where am I at?
At the very beginning. You need to keep going.
Yeah, I'm looking, there it is, Windows stuff. And I'm looking for start up full screen is at false, so that's good. Now let's go ahead and do Control Find, and we're going to look for Edit Packages, and go ahead, take a second and tell them about these packages. What are these edit packages here?
Now, when you this UCC program we were talking about, the compiler, what it does when it runs is it looks through these edit packages lines, and for every edit package line, it looks for a .u file in your Unreal Tournament system folder, and it'll go through and look at each file. And as long as it finds a .u file, it'll move on to the next edit packages line. If it does not find a .u file, it looks for a folder under Unreal Tournament that matches.
Kind of like the 3D Buzz folder. And when it finds that folder, it's kind of looking for a structure inside it.
Right. It's looking for a models and a classes folder.
And then to get more specific, it will be looking for a UC file for instructions on how to handle everything and all of there.
Right.
All right. So let's go ahead and add our own edit packages here. So I'm just going to copy this line because I'm too lazy to type it all. And let's just come on over here and type in 3D Buzz. Okay? So from there, we'll come up here, File, Save, and we'll just go ahead and close it. So are we ready to compile?
Yes.
I'd say we are. So for compiling, all I need to do is I'm going to come back to my command prompt area, and I'm going to say change directory ... to go up a level, / to then turn around and go back down into the system folder. Boom. So now we're inside a system, and UCC is the compiler, and let's use it. UCC space make. And we will hit enter, and away she goes. And you'll see all those package files that we were just looking at a second ago from inside the any folder. This is another very important area that you need to make sure that you've got no errors in here. This is one of the areas, by the way, that if the spline actually got through, you'll see a big, huge error down here, but it will still compile the .u file. And you can still go in there, but it's just going to completely malfunction. It's not going to work right. But we got complete success, okay? Compiled Viper, 0 errors, 0 warnings. This means I should be able to come back here to my system folder, scroll all the way over, and I will now find a 3dbuzz.u file. Tell us about this .u file there, Mr. Logan.
This is our actual package as the Unreal Tournament game sees a package. It took that 3D Buzz folder, and basically everything we had in it was kind of like a package, but all where we could see everything. This has put it all into one file.
Right. So at this point, if I wanted to go out there and completely kill 3D Buzz, I can, right?
Yes, you can.
But I'm not wanting to do that because we're going to go back in there and add all.
We still need those files to work with.
Awesome. Okay, so at this point, we're ready to go ahead and simply come down here to Unreal Ed and execute it. Unreal Ed 2.0. Woo, Windows all over the place. Oh, I'm happy. So let's go ahead and close this. You know what's probably the best thing? Let's start out by opening up our mesh browser and showing them what the gun looks like.
Right.
I mean, that would kind of be proof that we're kind of in the Unreal world now.
Right.
So I'm going to come up here, and you'll see this icon right here with a little eye on it. That's our mesh browser. I'm simply going to click on that. From in here, I will click on this guy, and I'm going to drag down close to the bottom, and I'm hunting for Viper. Ooh, Viper is listed like an object now inside of Unreal. Oh, it's a spec. Who cares? Hold your left mouse button down and scroll forward, and look at that. If I right-click and drag left and right, you'll notice that I am able to rotate around. It is kind of an awkward feel, by the way, but it's no big deal. So anyways, there's our weapon. It's got the textures on it. Textures look placed right. It's got all of the lighting information that we made earlier in the lighting lesson, which is really awesome. The fact that we added all those tons of lights in and baked all that information out to the texture and created our own shadows and kind of grunged it up a little bit. Very cool. We also have fire down, or excuse me, all fire down. Look at that. It's moving. Fire, select. Ooh, interesting. Spin down, spin up, and how many frames are in each of those segments. And we also have all as well if we want to look at all of them. So you can simply select one of these and say, what does all fire look like? Hit play, and there's all fire. that's exactly what it's doing. Okay, remember we gave it when we were in the animation lesson. We actually had all of this violent jar going on in there. Remember how I told you, even though we only did a negative 72 degrees rotation on our barrel, it does look like indeed it's spinning constantly. So here's our down. Of course, it's extremely fast. So there's our fire, our select, our spin up, and or spin down and spin up. And, of course, we'll be able to control all of this when we get into the wonderful world of coding in the next couple of lessons. All right, so now that we've got our mesh browser up, we've seen what it looks like, and we're all really happy with that, let's go ahead and close this out. And for our next step, let's go ahead and, well, let's start out by simply coming in here and creating a brush, and we'll make a real quick level. So I'm going to come in here, and let's set my width for this guy to...
You right-click on the cube icon, by the way, if you didn't know.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Right-click on the cube. Thank you very much. So 512, I'll go ahead and create it by hitting Build. This is just making my brush. And, Logan, you want to talk a little bit about this, or... Nah.
This is just some basic level editing stuff.
Yeah, and we are going to be coming out with level editing for Unreal Tournament 2003 with the new editor and all that good stuff here really soon. So if you're not familiar with the wonderful world of editing inside of Unreal and Unreal Tournament, basically right now we are inside a world of complete mass. It's complete solid. And what we're going to do is simply subtract out by hitting Control S. And this is our default texture type, and we've subtracted this out of this world of complete mass, and this is what we've got so far. Next thing I want to do, let's go ahead and come in here and select some textures. I'm just going to select one of these faces, and I'm just going to hold Shift-B, and it selects all of my different faces there. And then I'm going to come up here and open up my texture browser by clicking on this icon with the picture on it. And then from there, File, Open. And what do we want to grab? Let's grab you like this one, right, Logan?
Yes, I do.
So we'll grab the Court_FX. We'll open that guy. Let's go ahead and click All so that we can see everything. I've got all of my faces back here selected. So let's just give it the A_base one. It's the first one. And then let's see, what else? Come back over here and select the floor maybe. Just to make it kind of interesting, let's give it this guy. And you know what? Let's give it that one up for the top. That's good enough for my textures. Now let's go ahead and come in here and do a couple more things real fast, and we'll get back to our gun. I'm going to right-click anywhere up here on this top and come down and say Add Light here. Right-click over here, Add Light there, and right-click over here and Add Light there. Why am I adding these lights, Logan?
Just so we can see in this little world we've created.
Seems kind of good, isn't it? We don't want to actually go and play the game and it be completely pitch black. That just wouldn't be fun. Okay, so we've got this done. So the next thing that we can go ahead and do is let's find our weapon. I'm going to go ahead and come up here, and you'll see this little pawn and the actor class browser. And then from inside here, I can simply go ahead and expand this guy. And you know what? I can go ahead real quick, come down here to Navigation Point, since we're setting this up to play. Come down here and grab a Player Start, and then right-click over here on the floor somewhere and add Player Start here. Okay. Now, let's close that up. Now let's get back to the world of guns. I'm going to come up here to Inventory. I'm going to open it. There's Weapon, okay, the Weapon class. I'll go ahead and open it. There's all of our objects inside of Weapon. You'll see Tournament Weapon up underneath it. Let's go ahead and extend Tournament Weapon. And from up underneath there, you'll find Viper. And I can, at this point, select Viper. Come over here, right-click, and say Add Viper here. And if I did that, you'll notice that if we go ahead and scroll up over here, and let's just kind of move down, you'll see that we actually have the gun inside here. But now, let's go ahead and build this level and run it, we've got a little bit of a problem, wouldn't you say, Logan?
Yes.
So what I'll do is I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to build everything. So there it is. So now I've got my lighting and all done. And let's go ahead and play the map.
Sounds good.
So we'll just simply hit the little icon there. Let it go through. Things are probably going to really chug right now because of the recording. And, wow.
No gun.
It's not chugging like I thought it would. Very cool. So there we are. And now if I walk forward, even though you don't see a gun, watch this. Boom. You got a weapon, and it fades out. So I do have the gun, but I don't have the gun.
You have the gun, but you can't see the gun.
Yeah, there you go. So I need to set some default properties so that I can see the gun. Agreed?
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and let's bring up my console here and let's exit out for now. And I'm going to take this gun that's currently in here. So let's go ahead and select it and delete it out. Because if I don't delete it out, we're going to make some changes over here, but we're not going to end up seeing any difference over. Even when we make saves to our package, we're still not going to see the gun inside the level unless we replace it in there.
It has properties, and it keeps its properties, whereas we're resetting default properties without changing that one gun's properties.
Exactly. Oh, it's just beautiful. So to get to our default properties, all I need to do is just right-click on Viper, come down to default properties, bring up my little dialog right here, and the main area, and there are a lot of default properties. What do you say, Logan?
Yes, there are.
I mean, tons. But the area that we are interested in right now is inventory. So I'm going to go ahead and open up inventory. And in here, let's go ahead and scroll down.
Let's scroll all the way down to like third person and around there.
Yeah, so we can see them all. And the reason Logan was saying scroll down a little bit further is you want to tell them about some of the scrolling issues.
Yeah, this dialog has a few issues with scrolling and setting stuff. If you like set a value, then scroll a little bit, it gets weird redraw problems.
Yeah, and this is just kind of helping that not happen, so we don't have to scroll. All right, first thing, just so that you see something interesting by us coming here and changing our properties, pick up message, you got a weapon. Remember that? I showed it to you just a second ago. Let's come in here and change it to say, you got the Buzz Viper. And two exclamation mark points. Blah, 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 blah. I can't talk to save my life tonight. Okay. Now let's come down here. Next thing that we're interested in 3 different views. Okay. So if I come down a little bit, you're going to find a pickup view mesh, currently set to none. And we probably need to set this to something, don't you think there?
Right. If you want to see the gun when it's laying on the floor.
So in this case, we need to address it 3dbuzz.Viper. We need to refer to the package that it's in. Okay? So 3dbuzz.viper. And I can go ahead and highlight and copy this. Now I'm going to come down here to the player. All right, so pick up view mesh. Go ahead and say it again. This is which one?
This is the gun you'll see laying on the ground that you can run up to and pick up.
So then you got the player view mesh, and I can paste this in here, and this one's what?
This one is the gun that you'll see in your hands when you're holding it.
Exactly. And then there's one more. If we come down here to the third person mesh, I'll go ahead and paste that in. Go ahead, Logan.
That's what other people will see if they're looking at you while you're holding this weapon.
Okay. Now, take a second and talk about modeling multiple weapons. I mean, obviously, we got these 3 different places where I can add different things in there. Does that mean I could model different weapons?
Exactly, yes. You could make individual weapons for the third person for the pickup. And this is actually done quite a bit, or it's pretty much always done by the developers of Unreal. They would make like a model that has no animation, make that the pickup mesh. Then they go in there and make a kind of lower detail model for the third person. And then the highest detail for the one that you're holding and looking at.
And even on the highest detail one, the one that you're holding, that may have only half the weapon model.
Right. They only model the side that you're going to see.
Exactly. Because remember, when somebody else is looking at you, they don't see that particular weapon. They're seeing the third-person mesh down here. So it's a whole different thing. So that allows you to add more detail in what's actually being seen. Because remember, we talked earlier about the restriction on polygons and keeping that to a low count. And by only modeling half of a gun, it technically allows you to double your polygon count then for that one half to make it look like it's a more complex gun.
Right, put all the detail on the side you're going to see.
Exactly. So with those guys made, I guess that's about all we need to change in here. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I need to now save my 3D Buzz package. You agree with that there?
Right.
And to do that, I need to go ahead and come up here to View, and I'm going to say Show My Packages. Okay, so Show Packages. And I know you're dying to talk about something here. I'm going to go ahead and click 3D Buzz real quick. Hit save. And did you want to talk about this real quick?
All right. Now, you see this list of packages here. Remember back in the Edit Packages line in the Unreal Tournament INI file. Now, when Unreal had loaded, you see 3D Buzz was there. That meant it loaded that 3dbuzz.u as soon as the editor started up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Unreal Ed will not, by default, load every single .u package you have in your system folder. It only loads up the ones that are in the Edit Packages line. I mean, you can go later and load more that you want.
Right.
But this is why you see these packages here, because they were in Edit Packages lines in the INI file.
Right. And I would say saving this is pretty important, right?
Yes, this is all the changes you made have no effect. It's just been made in RAM in the editor. You need to actually write this to disk now.
And now, so that they understand where this is being written to, when I hit save, tell them what file is actually being written to.
This is saving to that 3dbuzz.u in your system folder. This is completely ignoring that the 3dbuzz folder at the root of Unreal Tournament. That it's at this point the editor does not work with any of those kind of files. It only works out of .u package files and other ones you'll find that ship with the game.
Very good. Awesome. So with that, let's go ahead and come back up here. Let's make sure Viper is indeed selected. And we know everything's been saved. So I'm just going to come back over here, right-click, say Add Viper here. So there it is. And from this point, we can go ahead and come in and let's go ahead and play the map again. And so now things are going to chug down a little bit. But look at that. I see something spinning over there. So let's go ahead and come into the game itself. And this will probably get a little bit slow. Actually, it's holding up pretty well, so that's good news. Check that out. You know, you just got to be proud when you actually see something that you were working on from inside of 3ds Max hours earlier appear inside a game, rotating around, ready to go.
Pretty much.
So now we do have some problems, though. If I come over here and select it, well, let's actually select it here.
You already picked it up.
An idea, and I wasn't paying attention because I was too busy yabbering. But with it selected now, let's go ahead and switch over to the gun. So brace yourself for this one. And there we go. Got some problems, wouldn't you say, Logan?
Yep, it's kind of stuck to the left side of our face.
And that's probably not good. You know, we could have made one of these walls in here a mirror and use that as well, which we could just go ahead and come back out here and exit real quick. And I don't know, let's pick on this wall right here. So I'll just simply click on it, right-click, come into Surface Properties, and then from there I'll need to, let's do, which one do you want to do? Translucent and mirror. And then from there, do we...
yes, then we need to rebuild so it reapplies the lighting and everything to it.
All right, so with all of that in place, we'll go and close this. We'll come up here and do a rebuild all. And then let's go ahead and come back in here real quick. This will allow us to see what the third-person mesh looks like by looking into the mirror. Okay, so there we are. There's the mirror. So we'll fire. We will... I was about to start firing. Who's that guy? All right, so from there, let's go ahead and run over here. This time, I'm not going to run my mouth. Let's pay attention to... You got the Buzz Viper, and it faded out. That's what I wanted you to see earlier. Now, let's just see how scary the Buzz Viper actually looks. So far, so good. Yep, Oh, yeah, that's not scary. Yeah, that could be considered scary. You can see that the positioning is different. Up here in the first person, it's, as Logan said a second ago, stuck to our cheek, where in the actual third person, it is huge, offset a little too far back, and cutting his arm in half. Does that look about right to you, Logan?
Yep, that's pretty much it.
So we're going to need to take care of all of this positioning and all, and we're going to do that when we get into the next section. So with that, let's go ahead and exit out of this. And let's go ahead and come up here and do a file. And let's just save this as, and let's call it TST. We've already got a test level.unr. Let's go ahead and save it over that. And we're going to use TS. What we're doing right now is we're just saving this level out so that we can come back in here and not have to constantly go back into the Unreal Editor because there's no reason to. Instead of setting our default properties over here, we're actually going to set all of our default properties into our .uc file. And then when we do the UCC make, it'll read all of that and write it all into the .u file. So this will all be automatic over here. So there's no reason to keep bogging our system down by bringing the Unreal Editor up. So we'll just launch Unreal Tournament directly from the command line with this little test level map. So with that, yes, we want to replace it. All is good. And Logan, is there anything extra that you'd like to add to this section?
Not really. It was just showing how to set up a package and then how to actually compile that into the game.
So I guess as a real quick recap, since I like to do recaps when we get towards the end, basically all we did from the very beginning is we came up underneath Unreal Tournament and we created a 3D Buzz folder. We then copied all of our 3DS files over there. We then supposedly went on the internet and we got Bright from File Planet, and we got 3DS to UNR from unreal.epicgames.com, and we put those two files over here into the same folder. We also put our texture map over there as well. Then from there, we ran Bright, and we converted our buzz_texture.bmp to the vipermap.pcx file. It's now an 8-bit PCX file. From there, we then ran 3ds to UNR, and we set our project with the -setproj. By doing that, it automatically created the classes and the folders for us once we selected 3D Buzz as the location of our project. From there, I turned around, copied my PCX file over into my models folder. Then we went back to the 3ds to UNR, and we ran basically 3ds to UNR Viper space star.3ds, where Viper was defining the actual name of my class. Once I did that, it then generated my two model files, the _A and the _D files, and it placed them in the appropriate place, and it also created, up under my classes folder, the viper.uc file, and that contains all of my exec commands and all for importing in the mesh and our texture and animation sequence information, etc. We went up under Viper real quick, and we changed the expands from expands actor to expands tournament weapon so that we inherit the proper stuff for a weapon. And then from there, we also made a change to the name of our PCX file as well. Then after that, it was just a matter of simply coming back up, going over to our system folder. Then we found the good old Unreal Tournament.ini file, and we did a quick search for the edit P. And then from inside here, we just added a new line saying edit packages equals 3D Buzz, so that we would now read that 3D Buzz folder when it didn't find the 3dbuzz.u file during compile. So after that, we went back to the command prompt. We ran ucc make. There's good old ucc right there. With ucc make, it read all that information out of Unreal Tournament. It went through everything, and it saw that there was not a 3dbuzz.u file in there, because there's not at first by default, and so it actually compiled all that, told you that there was no warnings, no errors, and it generated this .u file and placed it over here. If you want to go back and compile again, we need to worry about this .u file, wouldn't you say?
Right. As you saw, there's lots of other edit packages, but it did not try to compile those. It saw .u files there for them. The same thing will happen to the 3dbuzz.u. If it sees the .u file there, it will not try to recompile.
Exactly. It'll just skip over it.
Right.
And generally, when you're compiling and it's one of your own personal .uc files, you're going to want the .u file to become actually done. So, excuse me. So with that, you need to make sure you come in here and delete 3dbuzz.u out. So what do you think? At the end of this lesson, should I go ahead and delete that there, since we're going to be coming back in?
Right. We're going to be going back to those files we had in our 3dbuzz folder.
So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift Delete, and yeah, I want to actually kill it. So I'll go ahead and tell it, yep. And with that, from there, we simply went into the game. We set a few default parameters so that the player could see the mesh, third person could see the mesh, and it was also the mesh that we could see on the ground as well. And after that, made a little level and went in there and checked it out. Is that pretty much everything?
Yep.
Okay, so that will conclude this particular lesson. About 40 some odd minutes worth of stuff, and I hope you find this information interesting and useful for getting your weapon over into Unreal Tournament. Thanks very much. Bye.